Hi, my name is Stephanie Van Koevering, and I am the Director of Public Affairs for the Michigan After School Partnership. Due to a technical issue, last week's recording of our webinar related to the OST 32N grant application did not save. So we are pivoting quickly, and I'm going to go ahead and record a redo for you right now. Feel free to pause, stop, return, and I will also include my contact information at the end of this PowerPoint so that you can reach out directly to me if you have specific questions. So let's dive in. Um, Again, interactive space, we do want to hear from you. We are very excited about the applications that you're considering. We've been hearing some great things from across the field. And so we want to share the best tools with you to make sure that your application is robust and successful as it can be. We want you to walk away from this presentation feeling far more confident in your ability to secure the 32N funding. And again, I'm recording this. You will be able to refer to it and reach out to me or anyone on the MASP team if you have questions. Any grant uh, application that is successful focuses on what we think of as the 5 C's. The first one is that the narrative is compelling. You are going to show that you have a significant need or set of community characteristics with which your OST program is uniquely positioned to assist. So you're going to use a lot of data, a lot of evidence, and some pretty innovative goal setting to show that you are a successful participant in this program and ensure that MyLeap gives you due consideration as a prospective partner. At the same time that you are being compelling, you also need to be concise. This feels like a daunting task. Any grant application does, but there's no need for a lengthy application. What you do want to be is thorough and complete without being overly wordy. We'll show you some tips for using data and evidence in ways that are bulleted, clear, and tell your story in a thorough way without necessarily having to take 12,000 pages to do it. You do need to be comprehensive. That's the data piece. You're going to not only consider what it is that you plan to achieve, but why it is the right approach to meet the needs of the folks in your community that you are aiming to support. Uh, we also hope that you will be careful. One huge mistake that a lot of grant writers make is not taking the time to proofread or to have other people read and ensure that your narrative hangs together as a complete whole. So do take extra time, allow yourself some extra time in the process, and find a little team of reviewers that you trust to help you understand where there are gaps and work to fill them. Lastly, we do encourage you to keep your eye on the calendar. It's not unheard of for grant deadlines to result in systems being overwhelmed by large numbers of people trying to submit at the same time. To avoid that, we encourage you to finish a day or two early so that you have some moments to play with and can support yourself in uploading multiple times if things should fall apart. The last thing you want to do is to miss the grant application deadline and put yourself out of the running for that kind of a mistake, especially after putting in all of the work that's needed to pull the grant itself together. So let's dive in. The first thing that you should know is that you are going to write directly to the rubric. On page 11 of MyLeap's RFP, you will find a chart, and that chart shows you exactly what you need to include in order to hit the various point values. So use it just like a checklist. For each section, you want to mirror the headings in the rubric. You don't want to make your grant reviewer have to go hunting for the information that is necessary to provide that evidence. So go ahead and use the same rubric titles, put your application in the same order, and then make sure that you can find evidence in your text that goes right down through that rubric and checks every heading that's included. There are priority points available in this grant process, so make sure you note where those are and emphasize them in a way that's going to ensure that they are included in your overall evaluation. I'm also going to suggest that you start with some data. Numbers are important. You need to show that what's happening in your community is a need that you are uniquely suited to meet. So there's a lot of data online that is available to support you with numbers of youth and socioeconomic status of youth and other factors that point to community need. You may also have some unique partnerships that you want to consider. So you need to look to your partner to see what they're thinking of as a need and what their interest is in participating with you. So be sure to access all of that online and be ready to share it in the beginning of your grant. Also, do cross-reference some things. There are some important elements to this grant that you need to make sure to highlight in your narrative. Those include your schedule, your budget, and any memoranda of understanding that you have, either with a site, facility, or again, any community partners. Lastly, there is a set of most quality standards. These are performance goals for OST programs in Michigan. They are important to my leap, important to the youth and the families and the communities that you serve. So be sure to note those quality standards as you are writing, just to be sure that you're hitting every single mark that you possibly can to be successful. So that rubric is important. Use it as your checklist for completing this application. Now, we are not providing templates here. I need to be perfectly clear about this. These are starting point ideas for you to begin thinking about what your application will need to include. So I'm going to introduce you to a concept called the logic model. Some of you may know what that is, but others may not. Essentially, what a logic model is it's a goal. What do you want? I'll give you an example that's very general. We all want our children to be successful in college, career, and life. That means graduating with a diploma. And so we need to increase the number of youth graduating with diplomas here in Michigan. And let's say we want to increase that number by 3% over the next 2-year period. So if that's our goal, then we have to start by looking at how many people are graduating now. So we start with that graduation rate of, let's say, let's make it really, really good. Let's say it's 97% and we want to get to 100. So we've got this 97% graduation rate. We've got that 3-point gain. So what are we going to do? What are the strategies that we're going to employ to make that graduation number go up? So when you consider that, you see the 97%, it's almost like a tunnel or a tube. At the beginning of the tunnel is the current graduation rate, the need, where we stand. And at the end is the ideal goal, 100% graduation rate. So what we're going to do is we're going to be putting together in the application the tunnel itself. What's happening inside that space that's going to get to the outcome we want to? You can think of your grant application, your model that you're building in the same way. That's a logic model. So it begins, of course, by assessing where you are. And so I've written a couple of sample statements here that you can look at that will show you what is the basis of a need and how that can help inform where you are trying to go. So again, you'll see that first set of sentences has it has a lot of data. A grant reviewer can look at that and know exactly where things stand right now today in your community, and then what you plan to do with the 32N funding that you receive should you receive it. The second sentence is very generalized. It says the same things, but it doesn't include any specificity. So if it's you versus another OST program in another part of Michigan, then the one where they can see and quantify the clearest amount of evidence and know exactly what's happening is going to have a leg up. So do be sure to think about that logic model and where you begin, because where you begin is going to determine how far you can get with the 32N funding that you receive. So this is a perfect logic model starter. And it's hard to read aloud, so I'll let you look at it and we'll talk about it. This is basically the inside of the tunnel or two. If we do these things, then we can move the current number, the current result by X amount as measured by what? By what date? How long is it going to take you? How are you going to know when you've been successful? And then what are you going to do to achieve that success? And at all points during your writing process, you need to keep that three-part linkage in mind. Where are we starting? Where are we going? And what are we going to do to get there? Your grant application should contain everything you're going to do to get there. And you're going to explain and very clearly elucidate the connection, why your approach is the most likely to be effective, why what you're doing is aimed at lifting that. There's undoubtedly research available online that you can find. Maybe it's even your own past data that you can look at and show how you've been able to move the needle so far and how much further you're able to take it with continued or increased funding from the state. So there are a couple of examples here. The not so good example is really quite terrible. If you can do better than that, I think you're going to be very effective. So again, you want to show the measure and what you're doing. And those measures can be very innovative. Teacher observations, great one. Post-program surveys also good, but student outcomes are the strongest. So what can you measure? What is your local school district measuring? And how can you be able to track that? Um, and I do want to talk a little bit about your budget because this is what's sort of connected to your big two. A lot of programs and grant writers make the mistake of starting with a number. They look at the most dollar amount available, the biggest dollar amount that they can get, and they start there and they design their program around that. That is exactly the wrong way to go about this. What you need to do is you need to build the program first. You're starting with where are we right now? Where are we going? How are we going to get there? That logic model. And then you're going to come up with probably to fully implement that logic model and get the success you're hoping for, it's going to be a pretty big number, probably bigger than what's allowable through this particular program. So generally speaking, you're going to start with the summit of Everest, and then you're probably going to have to work it back to the allowable grant amounts underneath this opportunity. So be prepared to have that little negotiation with yourself, but don't begin with a number and then design the program around that because that's backward and that won't help you develop the evidence and the narrative to tell your story well. So just start with that. Then once you have your budget in place, you need to do a couple things with it. You need to double check everything to make sure that all of the expenditures fit within the grant guidelines. If it's not allowable, don't put it in there. Don't exceed the administrative cap that is allowable on this grant. And again, you can go back to my LEAP and their application materials to look at what those numbers are, what's allowable, what you can't exceed, etc. Just make sure that you've, dotted your I's and crossed your T's and be ready to go through that budget. Make sure at the end of it, you are going to want to take some time and have multiple people go back and make sure that your narrative actually matches your numbers. That's one of the most common mistakes that folks see when they are reviewing these types of grants is that the two sides, usually it is a couple of different people working on the budget versus the narrative, and often there are things that fall through the cracks. So do take that time at the end of your writing process to go back and double check that everything matches, that everything is clean, and then you'll be ready to submit. As you're writing, so we've talked about the the logic model and the tunnel that you are filling, you do need to tell that compelling story. Data are crucial, and you want to weave a narrative that talks about your project's significance. So if we have that magic 97% graduation rate and we need to get to 100, let's say that there are 5 different approaches that could take us to 100%. Why is yours the best? What makes yours special? Is there research about yours that makes it the strongest candidate for positive change? What do you offer that's unique within your community that youth and families and employers and community members really respond to? You need to tell a narrative that sets you uniquely apart and makes you the strongest use of funds for the state to consider. You also, at the same time that you're telling this amazing story, you also need to be clear and concise. You do definitely want to use plain language, even when you're summarizing research. It's easy for all of us to get into jargon that we use every day, little acronyms, little words that are terms of art in our field. Don't use those. Write like you're writing to an 8th grader who doesn't know anything about OST. Be very clear, very direct, and at all times use your narrative to draw the link between the current state and where you're going. Your program does X, Y, Z at what times, and that is why you are going to get to the desired outcome first because your approach is best. There are ways to help you stay clear. You need to use headings, bullet points, and short sentences. This will make your document easy to scan and digest by all of the reviewers, no matter who they are. It will be so clear that they can't possibly misunderstand or misinterpret or have to guess about anything. On our Zoom last week, we did talk about GEMS and the bullet point issue. Some versions of different word processing documents don't make the bullet points come across very well in GEMS. So if you're having trouble making an actual round circle bullet, you can work around that. You can use little hyphens or dashes or numbers or something to help make it clear that you are bulleting a list rather than writing a narrative paragraph. But bullet points make it great. Super easy for everybody to catch on to. And even if you're not the best writer, you can summarize and you can make your case well if you are writing sentences that hang together and using bullets where helpful to shorten things and make them concise. At all times, you definitely want to focus on your reviewer, write for your audience. You need to be considering, okay, sit down, have somebody that you work with sit down and put your grant application and the rubric side by side, because that's exactly what your reviewer is going to be doing. They're going to be looking at both. They're going to be checking off the list of everything that's in that rubric to make sure that it's been addressed in your application. So do that. Go through. It is just like doing a jigsaw puzzle. If you do not have the evidence in your application to fully address that rubric, go back, retool, tinker, add another bullet, do something, but make it clear and compelling. Your objectives do need to be not just SMART, but SMART-E. We want them to not only be specific, measurable, achievable, all of that, but they also need to be inclusive and equitable. OST has the power to not just change individual lives, but to transform communities. So we want to show that. How are we going to reach the youth who most need the support that you have to provide? Avoid non-measurable goals. We're not just going to make things better. We are going to move the needle by how much, by when. And so be thinking about that. And again, as you have your peers in your network reviewing your draft application, this is something that they may be able to help support you with as well. And lastly, you do want to think about evaluation. MyLeap has included in its RFP very clear timelines and tools for evaluating your progress, but you need to be thinking a little bit more about the big picture. Show how you might not just measure an end result at the end of the grant cycle, but how are you going to track on your how are you going to track your achievements every step of the way? Are you going to look quarterly and see how your progress is and then retool some things if you need to in partnership with MyLeap? Or are you going to just wait and do it all at the end? I'm thinking that you may want to have some interim benchmarks that will help you really make sure that you are on track to achieve everything that you said you were going to do at the outset. So again, all of this, use every single step here to help support that rubric and make sure that you're communicating everything that you need to communicate. Before you submit, a couple of things that you need to check. You need to proofread meticulously. If you have typos, errors, formatting mistakes, that suggests carelessness and a lack of credibility. So be sure to have someone with a fresh set of eyes proofread your application. Um, and again, make sure it's somebody who may not be in the work that you do, looking with a rubric to make sure that they see what you think you included. The worst mistake that you can make, and I have made it plenty of times myself over my career, is to think that I've written it, I've checked that rubric 100 times, and I know I've got everything in there. When you are the writer, it's often very difficult for you to edit yourself because the things that you think you got maybe you didn't quite interpret correctly or you didn't include as strongly as you thought you did. So get a fresh set of eyes to proof it and to ensure that it's complete. Again, we've kind of talked about this. Internal and external reviews need to happen. Um, Follow the formatting rules precisely. There are page limits, character limits, I think, font sizes, spacing, labeling requirements. Make sure that you follow all instructions to the letter. If you do not, you may experience immediate disqualification, and that's not what you want. You have got a great idea, a great program in mind, and you don't want to be left out of the mix simply due to a technicality. So please be careful here. If the rubric says you must do something, then you must. There is no wiggle room. Some things are just going to be non-negotiable. So don't try to give yourself an out or justify why you can't do something. If you can't do it, then maybe you're not the right candidate for this opportunity. But all of us here at MASP believe that every program, everyone listening to my voice today has the ability to be the right candidate for this opportunity. So spend time, think about, why is the state saying I must do this? Understand the reasoning, and then figure out how to go with it. Submit your application on time. As I mentioned at the outset, there's no flexibility around a grant deadline. Give yourself enough time to complete the submission and don't run into any last minute issues. I would really aim to submit a day or two or three ahead of time so that number one, you can relax, but number two, you're not fighting with heavy online traffic at the same time. I've seen websites crash as a result of this. I don't know that I think GEMS is better than that, but you never know. Let's just be on the safe side and go ahead and submit early. That's pretty much the information I have to share at this point. Love if you would click on this link and take our survey. I don't know if you can click on something in a Zoom, so I'm going to leave it here so you can at least write it down. I know that the PowerPoint itself is also accessible online, so go ahead and click there if you need to. Lastly, Q&A. I know that this opportunity, due to our technical issue, doesn't offer that opportunity. But here is all my contact information. That is my cell phone number. You may use it day, evening, weekend, anytime, and I or someone on my team will get back to you. And the same is true of my email address. Write to me. Let me know where you're struggling. I'm happy to provide that extra set of eyes for you if you're really in need. I don't know your community, however, so I would definitely suggest that you have somebody local also look at this and make sure that you're ready to submit. I know from seeing and talking to many of you over the last couple of weeks that we have a lot of great strength in this cohort of application. And I know that each one of you can be very successful, even if you're on the fence. Find a way to get your application put together because this is such a powerful opportunity that the state has given to the OST community, and we want to really make the most of it. And I know that you all are innovating and thinking and doing great things with our youth every single day, and now's the time to really shine. So let's get those applications together. Again, feel free to reach out, and I will be available to talk to you at any time. Thank you and good luck.